What's going on, everybody? It's Jay here from Nerd Takes, and today I wanted to give you my take on Godzilla and Kong: The New Empire. So, I didn't really have high expectations for this one heading into it. I've seen all the previous movies in this shared universe, and outside of some decent action scenes, they haven't really had much to offer in terms of quality. With this latest entry, I figured it would be more of the same, and that it most certainly was. It's a very forgettable movie. There was really nothing that stood out as well done. It wasn't the worst thing I've seen this year. That honor is held by Madam Web by a landslide, but it certainly wasn't good either. The movie has issues that range from bad CGI to bland storytelling to unfunny attempts at humor. But its main flaw is that it's just a misuse of two legendary IPs with the titular characters of Godzilla and King Kong, especially with this coming out after the phenomenal film that was Godzilla Minus One. The continued missed opportunities of this shared universe were on full display. Without getting into spoilers, the general concept of the story is that once again, Godzilla and King Kong have to team up to save not only Earth, but the Hollow Earth that we were introduced to in Godzilla vs. Kong. It really is that simple of a concept and that derivative of the last film that they did. And to be honest, once you've seen them do that once and it was underwhelming, I wasn't super excited to see that play out again. And much like the last time that they did it, I was underwhelmed. The story definitely focuses more on Kong than it does Godzilla. It very much feels like Godzilla is a bit of a side character in the whole thing, which I suppose in this universe does make sense based on how they've set up Kong to be a bit more human like with thoughts and emotions versus Godzilla, who's essentially a territorial creature motivated by making sure no other monster takes over his territory, which is the Earth. But nonetheless, the balance of focus between the two just felt like it leaned a bit too much in the direction of Kong for a movie that not only has both in the title, but has Godzilla listed first. But the story itself is very bland and forgettable. It relies a bit on plot convenience in certain spots that sticks out as poor writing. For example, the way Kong gets his arm brace that we see in the trailer was a spot where I thought to myself, that seems to be a bit too coincidental that the exact thing you needed is exactly where you need it to be. It's also a bit predictable as well. You kind of know what's about to happen before it happens. There was no real twists or turns that caught me by surprise. The writing isn't particularly good when it comes to dialogue either. I hate to use the same phrase again by saying it's bland and forgettable, but it's too fitting not to. There's some exposition that's just a little bit too on the nose. There's also a lot of attempts at humor that just fall flat. To be honest, the comedic relief character in the film, Bernie, wasn't very funny at all and came off as slightly annoying at times. And it's a shame because I'm actually a fan of the actor who played him, Brian Tyree Henry. I really liked him in the movie Bullet Train. I think he showed some good acting ability and comedic timing in that, so it just kind of felt like they misused him in this. I also didn't think the character Trapper had very funny jokes either. Almost none of them landed. They just weren't that good in the first place. I don't really think it was a fault of either actor. I'm also a fan of Rebecca Hall as an actress, but again, it felt like between the writing and the direction of this, she wasn't really given much to work with. I would make the case for the actors that I think they were doing what they could with what they were given. The use of CGI in this was just way too much. The sheer amount that they used made the task of creating high quality CGI scenes nearly impossible. It ranges from middle of the road to bad when it comes to this aspect. A lot of what's taking place in the Hollow Earth feels like you're watching a cinematic from a video game, and when the monsters are on the regular Earth, it just doesn't look very good at all. There were also some issues with the logistical aspects of the movie, specifically down in the Hollow Earth. There were times where the quickness in which they were able to travel from certain areas to others just didn't make sense. It's a little hard to describe without spoiling, but essentially they were moving around areas that, based on the story, one would think they were all at least somewhat far from one another, if not significantly far. But in the time frames that it would take them to move from one to the other, you would have thought it was just down the road. I'm not sure if it was an editing issue or a writing one, but it just came off as a bit odd. Another thing that flat out did not work for me was the changing of Godzilla's atomic breath power up color from blue to pink. I'm sorry, but that was just a foolish change, and it did not look good or add anything to the character. If anything, it actually took away some of the intimidation from Godzilla, as pink just isn't really an intimidating color. I would have personally just left it as the iconic blue that everybody recognizes, but if you were going to change it, you could have literally picked any other color you could think of, and it would have looked better than pink. It was just a bizarre choice, if you ask me. One thing I can say that I liked in this movie was the action scenes. Much like the other films in this shared universe, they were the only parts that I found entertaining. The CGI still wasn't great in them, but they did at least have a few exciting and cool moments, so there was that. I think for me, when it comes to the movies in this shared universe, one of the reasons they don't work, and probably the main reason, is that they just don't seem to really understand the properties in which they're using. They just want to make a shared universe with them, and it just hasn't quite hit the way that I think they wanted it to. I've personally always enjoyed the Peter Jackson King Kong film, even though it's not a perfect film either. Peter understood the source material of what he was making and made something in the style of it. The same can be said for director Takashi Yamazaki with Godzilla Minus One, which I thought was a great film. Each of those films and the respective filmmakers that made them capture the core of the two different monsters' legendary stories and how those stories represent them as characters. They are perfect examples of just how good monster movies can be when they're treated with accuracy and care instead of just trying to turn them into the Avengers or another superhero team up. As I said in the beginning of the review, this wasn't the worst movie I've seen this year, but that's no way to say that it was a good movie either. It's not one I'd personally recommend, but if you wanted to watch it because you've seen all the others, then I think how you view it will be pretty similar to how you viewed any of those. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll be back again with another review soon.